July 28th Westfield Washington School Board of Trustees meeting is now in session. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're glad to see a few of you here with us. Since we have a quorum, please join me to stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we do not have any public comments for this evening's meeting, so I will skip that portion of the reminders. The first item on our first section of business is business and operations, and I will ask Dr. Hunt to present the legal advertisement and issuance of RFP for BOT project first.
Thank you, President Ogle. This evening before you, in your board packet, you will have information regarding the legal advertisement and also the issuance of an RFP for a BOT project or a build, operate, and transfer. And so this evening, I'm just asking that the board would approve the legal advertisement. So in other words, we need to follow state statute as it is associated with a BOT project that we would need to legally advertise and then also issue an RFP. At this time, the RFP has not been finalized, and we'll keep you up to date on that RFP. But this evening, I'm just asking that the board approve, again, that legal advertisement and the RFP. As it relates back to the July 14th, just as a background information, the board did approve a resolution that it would allow us to utilize a BOT as a delivery method for construction and all the provisions that were included within Indiana code. So again, this evening, it's asked the board would approve the legal advertisement and also the RFP issuance for a BOT project.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hunt. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the legal advertisement and authorize the issuance of a request for proposal for the middle school build, operate, transfer project in accordance with Indiana Code 5-23 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Carrie. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Amber. It's been moved and seconded to approve the legal advertisement and authorize the issuance of the request for a proposal for the new middle school BOT project in accordance with Indiana Code 5-23. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, and Dr. Hunt, we'll turn it back to you to present on the property purchase resolution.
Yeah, as the district grows, it is our intent as a district to continuing to look for property that would be available to us as a district for the potential facilities or growth within the district. And this evening before you, you will see a resolution. Now, in order for us to close on the property, the board does have to approve that purchase as stated in the resolution. So this evening, I ask that the board approve the resolution for the purchase of property. And then with that approval, we would be able to move forward and set up a closing date for the purchase of that property. So I ask the board's approval this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution to purchase the property located
At 408, Deer Walk Trace, yes.
as presented. Want to make sure we have that on record, 408 Deer Walk Trace. Can I get a motion, please? So moved. Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Carrie. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution to purchase the property located at 408 Deer Walk Trace. Is there any discussion or questions?
We talked about this a little bit before, but just for benefit of others, if this doesn't go through, something happened, we can always sell the property. We could.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yes,
okay.
we've talked to legal counsel about that and ensured that if we needed to sell that property, we could sell that property, yes.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. And Dr. Hunt, finally, back to you again to present the declaration of technology equipment surplus.
Thank you again, President Ogle. This evening, I'm asking the board to approve the surplus of approximately 350 laptops that were previously used by our teaching staff across the district. By Indiana code, we have to, as a board, you would have to approve that those are recognized as surplus. We have worked with technology on this to ensure that these computers would not be used or have other use within the district. And so this would allow, again, recognizing these computers as surplus would allow us to dispose of those laptops according to Indiana code and making sure that we are following all the Indiana requirements that are associated with any surplus items within a school district.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. At this time, I will entertain a motion for the approval to declare approximately 350 district-owned computer devices as surplus property in accordance with Indiana law as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. It's been moved and seconded to approve the declaration of approximately 350 district-owned computer devices as surplus property in accordance with Indiana law as presented. Is there any discussions or questions?
Do we put these up for auctions or recycle them?
So what we would recycle them. We're also offering those computers to the teaching staff as well. So communication would go out. But before we were able to send out that communication and allowing the teachers to purchase such devices, we needed to first recognize those as surplus.
One of the things this does allow is as they get their new device that they're getting issued, if they want to buy this one and hang on to it, the pressure to transfer is not there like it is, because typically they would turn that in. If they buy it, they don't have to turn it in.
All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right, next we move to curriculum, and we'll ask Dr. Ryan Hoover to present updates on the Westfield High School Student Handbook.
Thank you, President Ogle. Members of the board, as a reminder, during the 26th legislative session, the Indiana General Assembly enacted legislation requiring school corporations to adopt policies restricting student use of personal wireless communication devices during the instructional day. In response, we adopted policy A301, personal electric device wireless communication devices. To ensure consistency between board policy and student expectations, the administration is recommending revisions to the Westfield High School Student Handbook. These revisions align the handbook with new board policy and establish clear expectations regarding student use of personal electronic devices throughout the day. In note, the proposed revisions are students may not use personal wireless communications during the school day. All personal wireless communication devices must be powered off, stored away, and inaccessible from the beginning of the school day until dismissal, including passing periods and lunch. Policy applies to cell phones, smartwatches, connected to cellular or internet device, tablets, laptops, gaming devices, Meta and other smart glasses, and similar wireless communication devices. We also did incorporate some limited exceptions permitted by Indiana law, including emergencies, documented medical conditions, student IEPs, 504 plans, language transition for multi-language learners, and school-approved instructional devices remain permissible when authorized by the corporation. We do have the new handbook language available to you, as well as the old policy language, so you can see the updates included. There is no fiscal ramifications, and it would be our recommendation that we approve these revisions to our high school student handbook regarding personal electric device wireless communication devices as presented.
Thank you, Dr. Hoover. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve the revisions to the Westfield High School Student Handbook related to personal electronic devices, wireless communication devices as presented, effective for the 2026-2027 school year.
I make a motion.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Carrie. It's been moved and seconded to approve the revisions to the Westfield High School Student Handbook related to personal electronic devices, wireless communication devices as presented, effective for the 2026-2027 school year. Is there any discussion or any questions?
This is all going to be on the website before they come to school. And do the kids get a handbook
They do,
when, okay,
yep. And it's-
hardcover?
Yeah, it's electronic, we don't print them off anymore, but they'll have access to this. And quite honestly, we're gonna go kind of above and beyond. Mrs. Dennison and her team did a phenomenal job working with not just parents, but teachers. And then we're gonna make sure that this, since it's such a new and quite honestly impactful change, that we wanna make sure that it's out there quite a bit. And, but we do wanna start it for the school year, on day one, so, just so we're gonna try to start it right off the bat. So we'll have communications going out between now and then, as well as updated, electronic handbooks.
Very good.
Any further discussion?
Right, so is this similar to the surrounding schools?
Almost identical.
Okay.
There are a few schools, but quite honestly, when these situations come up, most of our administrators at the high school level will reach out to their colleagues, and we try to be similar, at least within, Hamilton County, but even beyond that. This was one that was pretty clear cut. A few schools did deviate just a little bit, but we're gonna try to stay very similar to our colleagues.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right. And Dr. Hoover, we'll turn it back to you for information on Parent Square Communications contract.
Thank you, President Ogle. Members of the board, over the past few months, our administration has evaluated opportunities to modernize and improve communication with our students, families, and staff. Part of this process, we recently participated in a demonstration and planning meeting with an organization called Parent Square, which is a comprehensive communication platform designed specifically for K through 12 school districts. The thing about Parent Square, the benefits, it provides a single integrated platform for district, school, classroom, and emergency communications, kind of an all-in-one. The system supports mass notifications, two-way messaging, automatic language translations, online forms, digital permission slips, volunteer signups, and emergency communications through text, email, phone, web, and mobile application. It also integrates directly with our student information system to ensure families receive timely and accurate information. As you know, we are currently using a few platforms right now. School Messenger and Talking Points are the two that those combined kind of serve the needs. Parent Square would fill both of those roles plus many others. We would actually eventually move to using this K through 12 for all communication. When we met with them, 85% of districts in Indiana have currently transitioned to Parent Square over the last few years. So this is an opportunity that we believe would be beneficial for our district and for our teachers and most importantly, our families. Obviously, we always check on the financial ramifications. The first year total price would be $67,462.50. Right now, we currently pay $45,662 for Talking Points annually. We would phase these out. School Messenger is $14,000 annually. So obviously, if you look at those, really about $60,000 for both. We're actually paying for the first year in Parent Square. You actually pay a 50-cent fee per student one time. So after this first year, it's really about a net wash as far as what we're currently paying for now, for School Messenger and for Talking Points. Our goal would be to phase out School Messenger and Talking Points. We would receive about a $20,000 reimbursement in that process when we phase out Talking Points, and then kind of go from there. The cost for Parent Square is about $7,500 more annually, but the functionality and the ease of use are well worth the cost. We're going to explore putting this per student cost into our fees going forward. This is a pretty typical common practice that schools would do. And then the last thing that we just want to add is, there's always a little bit of a learning curve when you switch from one platform to another. Parent Square has not just online help, but they have modules. They have many opportunities for us to do that. They told us it's about a 3 to 5 week transition. We would not expect our teachers to immediately start off the school year. We would actually transition from Talking Points into Parent Square once we have opportunity to do that. So we do believe, though, that we wanted to bring this to your attention for your recommendation. It would be our recommendation that we do a 3-year Parent Square agreement beginning in the 26-27 school year.
All right, thank you, Dr. Hoover. At this time, I will entertain a motion for the approval of a 3-year Parent Square agreement as presented, so implementation can begin immediately in preparation for the 2026-2027 school year. Thank you, Carrie. Is there a second? Thank you, Amber. It's been moved and seconded to approve the 3-year Parent Square agreement as presented, so implementation can begin immediately in preparation for the 2026-2027 school year. Is there any discussion or questions?
Yeah, I've used Parent Square the last 3 years. There's some nuances to it and everything else that I found. Is there going to be, like at each building, a person who knows it inside and out? So when a teacher says, hey, I want to make a list
Sure.
of this group or that group, you know, first period, second period, or athletes, or whatever the case may be?
Great question, Mr. Steele. So absolutely. So breaking it down, the first thing we're going to ask really our teachers to be able to do and our administrators to be able to do is to be able to reach out to their classes and reach out to the school in general, right, for the
Right.
principals. And so that'll be the first thing. But then obviously we will take it down to the teacher level. We will take it down to the coach level. I mean, you can break it down by bus, by however you want to break it down. You can break it down by clubs and so forth. And once you learn how to do that, it's actually pretty straightforward. But yes, learning how to do that does take some time. So right now, Dr. Carmen Carnes, myself, Dan Brita, our Director of Technology, Craig, Tierney, our Director of Communications, we're kind of working through what that's going to look like. But really, we're going to have at least one, if not 2 to 3 members at each school, somebody in our office staff, somebody in our technology staff, and then somebody on our end at the district office that is going to be able to handle those types of questions to get started. And so yes, the answer would be yes, that we're going to have people in the schools that become, experts at this.
Right.
We are going to start off with, expectations just as minimum to make sure that and one of the benefits about Parent Square is there's no opt-in. So even if we don't have to ask parents to sign into it, if we send a message out, even if parents didn't know they would still receive all the messages. So there won't be a time where people would have to say sign up for things. Now, down the road, if they want to receive mobile alerts, text alerts, things like that, there'll be preferences that we'll share out with parents how to do that. But yeah, it'll be the process between now and say January 1 is when we're going to want to have this rolled out.
What's the big differences between School Messenger and this?
So functionality is really what drives it. School Messenger does have some capability. Parent Square has some capabilities that School Messenger does not have. In particular, the texting, the mobile, and the ability to create groups for all different, and then have instant, and then availability to reach out to all parties at all times or different groups at all times. In School Messenger, it's a little more complicated. The nuances of that are even more complicated, where it doesn't have anywhere near the functionality that Parent Square has across the board. Things such as the virtual signups, the signups for field trips, the emergency communications are things that I've used, or I've seen used. Online forms like report cards will all be sent through Parent Square as well. We have in the package that we're recommending, you can have documents that are secured that can be sent. So IEP information, pretty much anything that would ever need to be sent that we've had to send that we couldn't necessarily send through School Messenger, we'll be able to do through Parent Square because of the secure document piece, plus some of the other features as well.
So the
Thank you.
question, the messaging that says classroom communication, so where it says Student Square, are now students going to be communicating through this app instead of like sending their teachers an email with their unique ID?
Student Square is an app that allows parents to talk to their student if we turn that on. So it's a safety feature because we have bell-to-bell, no cell. It would
So
be a
that's
direct contact.
that. component.
Yeah, so you would have to, on the, what they told us on the Chromebook, we currently don't allow students to download the app, but we could do that when we're ready to do that, and then parents could, it would be a way for parents to be able to communicate during the day.
And message there.
Yeah, yeah. So it's called Student Square is what they said.
Yeah, one of the other questions, just so you guys have all the information, you know, some of our high school students use Canvas for communication with teachers when regarding homework, different things like that, so we'd have to talk through what that looks like. That's obviously more of a K through, a 6 through 12 process, so that'll be something that could be a little different, but that's usually more for specifically for curricular and assessment, different things. This is really more of a communication for all families, for all reasons, and so I would say like it's more than just ease of use. It really allows the functionality of online forms. I mean, really, this would become our one and only for pretty much everything we'd use. And if at all we ever needed to be secure, password encrypted, then you can do that.
So are we doing away with Canvas?
We would not do away with Canvas.
So would the teachers have to put report cards or grades in both Canvas per se?
It would not. It would automatically populate through PowerSchool, and then would automatically populate through ParentSquare, through our report card system. So no, they would still just do the same thing, and they would put their grades in one time. We would be able to pull all that through our student information system and through ParentSquare.
Okay, so we're not making extra work for anybody or?
No, actually, it may actually, well, it will actually save work because of, it would be obviously all done through the app eventually that people use, or the website.
Yeah.
I think this will be a welcome change. I think it will create a lot of efficiency, especially in the future. Only having one place to log in instead of disparate systems
And-
and send in a permission slip.
Sure, and just for
all
the,
that stuff will be a lot easier for parents.
maybe for peace of mind,
Yeah.
I've seen it used from an administrative side, and a parent side. The first year, it took, once I learned, like, once you set up your own password and stuff, now I receive a lot of ParentSquare messages, but they're from coaches, teachers, principals, central office, bus drivers. So although I'm getting several throughout maybe the week, I'm getting the same exact one, and they pop up on my phone, they pop up on my computer. So you can set it up to really, it's really hard to miss out on messages that way. So it really is a great tool.
And when it talks about the automatic language translation, any language that, because we've got a lot here, so great.
It does.
I think, I think that piece alone, and plus the timely communications is what I hear a lot of complaints about, whether it's, a security issue or a transportation issue. They like, I didn't find out until later. This sounds like it'll really help a lot in that aspect.
From my phone, administrator or somebody could send out a message literally to all families in Westfield in 30 seconds.
Nice.
Good. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Motion passes. All right, that concludes our items for this meeting. Our next regular board meeting will be held August 11th at 6:30 in this room. Can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Bill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Amber. Meeting adjourned.
Okay. We're gonna pause.
evening, everyone. I'd like to call this work session of the Westfield Washington School Board of Trustees to order. Thank you to our board members and administration for being here this evening. And I'd also like to extend a special welcome to any guests joining us tonight. We appreciate your time and interest in our district's work. This evening's session is an opportunity for us to review and discuss important items that will help move the district forward. And at this time, I will turn it to our superintendent, Dr. John Atha.
Thank you, President Ogle and members of the board. This first half of the work session, we have Michael Reinhardt and Nathan Taylor, our Director and Assistant Director of Transportation. As you know, Michael's been on the job almost a month, getting pretty close. And as we get ready to start the school year, he wanted to give the board and us an update and I think get some feedback on processes and items as they do their work to be more efficient, to make sure our transportation is on time, and as we open new elementaries and restructure 8 elementaries, 1 middle school and 1 high school in the ELC, things he's discovered. And so this is just an opportunity for him to share that information and get feedback from the board. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael and Dr. Hunt and Nathan.
Thank you. Good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk tonight with everybody, just to see what I'm seeing in the limited time I've been here, but I think there's some things that are really meaningful to talk about, and I appreciate the time and opportunity to be able to discuss what we've come up with together and what we've seen. So make sure it worked the first time, good. Okay, so what I'd like to do in the way of updates, because I think there are some things we want to talk about concerning updates that we'd like to take a look at doing some things differently. But one of the things we're doing differently would be some celebrations in this sense. So I wanted to mention a few things that have been happening. So the first section is indicated by Fresh Start. So we have successfully transitioned into our new transportation facility, which is wonderful, and we're trying to figure out how to best use that space. Some people in the room we just did a tour of the facility, which I love doing. So I'm celebrating that too, because I really enjoy showing people our facility and what we do, because I think a tour of the facility shows the magnitude of what happens at the building, and it indicates that there's a lot going on. And anytime we get a chance to do that, it helps to raise our district IQ about that. So the new space, I think, has been a source of energy and created a new space and a sense of pride, and it's given fresh energy to the fact that it's a fresh start for transportation. New building, new leader, new dynamics, and new situation to be in. But also, we have embraced that fresh start, but one of the points of celebration in the fresh start is that we actually have some new employees that have joined us as well. And you will have seen that on the board consent in the personnel reports anyway, but we've added some staff to help support, and we've made a delineation between our AM and PM operations. We work a very long day. We start early in the morning and we run late into the late afternoon, early evening. And so we've actually just made a delineation between, we have an AM PM operational shift, given that our drivers work split shifts based on what we do at the school level. We come and go, it's a long day. So now we have AM PM dispatch and AM PM reception and some other dynamics that allow us to operate in that space and further define what people are doing in their time. And so that's a celebration. Drivers have already shared some positive feedback about improved communication and planning, so I just pushed out Nathan and I and Ingrid in particular, and Dr. Hunt worked through some of that with us as well. We worked through a back-to-school meeting, and I gave a list of important dates that our drivers should be expecting as that moves forward, with the understanding as well in that message of delivery that we said we will be, once we settle in, we'll be letting you know this 10 months in advance, because I still feel it's short notice, but that's what I have right now is short notice. So, and that's okay. But we're pushing that information out to drivers so that there's better communication. But the other part is that there's clear expectation, and updates help to increase our staff readiness. And so we're gonna make sure that we communicate what things we're doing in the handbook and the processes and procedures we want to follow consistently, so that we can be consistent in our operational framework. The other part would be that we're beginning to establish connections with district leadership, principals, and departments. In fact, we have a principal meeting tomorrow at Transportation in a new space. And I'm leaving it somewhat freeform so that we can talk about what the buildings are seeing and things we can work through. There is some structure in the sense of we want to tell them what we're doing and some plans that we have to improve our communications, but also improve how we're delivering on the things we need to for schools so that students are successful. Collaboration and strengthening our ability to serve our students and families and schools ultimately, and that's the goal, is to serve all those people, but to succeed most of all for our students, and so they can be successful. New Horizons in Transportation. Again, we've expanded office support. I don't have to belabor that portion of it. Meeting new team members to strengthen the service and responsiveness. Again, if we have internal capacity, it lets us focus on the schools. If we have communication we want out timely, then we have more personnel which to communicate that with. And we will be coming along the journey with the Parent Square aspect of that. And I'm happy to say I've used Parent Square in the past, so I'm familiar with that at the building level. And as Dr. Hoover alluded to, it allows us to be more granular in our communications to drivers and to parents and families. So we want to be better about communicating and being responsive to the phone calls and all the things that we need to do to make sure that our parents understand that it's not an empty building. We're actually there, and we actually do want to help move forward our conversation. So we do have a back-to-school driver meeting on August 4th. That'll be a 4-hour meeting, 2 of which, and lucky for them, they don't have to hear me talk the whole time. But we're going to have our staff present as well. Those are the resident experts in their field of expertise. We'll talk about it. But then 2 hours of that on the tail end will be professional development. We've involved the special needs department and also the district, Teresa, the district. I keep saying nurse, but I know that's not really the medical professional in our setting. And so we're going to, what we want to do, rather than to keep people stationary, is have people moving around rotational stations at 15-minute periods. And one of those stations will be just the drivers will want to meet and greet me and get to know me. And instead of asking the questions they want to ask during the meeting time, which has clear and defined goals that we have, we want to give them opportunity to ask questions and meet and greet. So 6 of those stations of the 7 will be professional development. The other will be a getting to know you, kind of a getting to know you table. That should be operational shifts. I think this is the biggest thing I would like to convey tonight. Relationship, ridership survey. So one of the things that has been problematic in the past with transportation is we've never captured ridership. From year to year, we're routing everybody, and we know everybody doesn't ride. And so we actually sent out a ridership survey to families. That would have been last Friday. It would have been Friday. We have, last I checked was about 4,500 or so responses to that survey. And I believe the intention is to push it out again Wednesday. And after that, we're hoping to capture people that have responded to that are riding. But then those who haven't, we will utilize a call center that we want to do this year as well to receive parent calls. But we also segue that into calling individual families that haven't responded so we can capture. In essence, we're trying to capture 100% forced response in the sense of we just want to build that out, because we can't begin to talk about utilizing capacities and having efficiencies when we don't know who's riding. And so that's the intention and purpose behind that. The other part of this is, and I have a more expansive form for this, but I will describe the essence of it, bell time recommendations to prove efficiency. One of the things I've discovered that we're doing is we talk about transportation in our bell times as though we're operating under a 2-tier system, right? We have an AM and a PM, 2 AM, loosely speaking, elementary, middle school, high school, right? But the truth is we're running a 4 bell time, a 4-tier, because our elementary, and I'll define this as our building arrival time for buses so that we're not muddying the waters, because we know we have building goals as far as students in the classroom, but from the operational side, my goal is always, what time do we arrive? And so right now in the elementary level, we have buses arriving at 7:30, and at the early learning center, we have the buses arriving and starting to dismiss at 8. So that's our 2-tier, 1, 2, with that. And then our high school, middle school, we have an 8:20 bus arrival time at the high school and an 8:30 at the middle school. And so we're asking for buses to be 4 different places at 4 different times, and that's why I say 4-tier. in that sense of the word. So we have multiple bell times we're trying to navigate. So in looking at this, one of our biggest problems on the routing side is our time of arrival for secondary in particular. And one of the, and let me dial back a bit about this as well. The other side of this bell time was when we arrive at schools, we really need to be off the lot within 10 minutes of our arrival time. So if we arrive at 7:30, I really need to be leaving at 7:40. And effectively, we're making ourselves 50 minutes to run a route. And conventionally was speaking, an hour between tiers is really what you want to be at. So, and that's 10 minutes of 5 minutes before you dismiss arrival, and it's 5 minutes to dismiss, and then we're off the lot. So effectively, with the multiple dismissals at the elementary levels, there was a lot of uncertainty around when to dismiss. So the unification of that has been helpful for us, but I'm also encouraging schools to please be timely in your response, because at the elementary level, that matters for us to arrive at secondary. So that's one fundamental thing that we have to look at that's just a procedural component. The other side of this is, as we looked at this, and so if you can imagine at the elementary level, if we're not getting off the lot until 50 after, and arrival at high school is 8:20, in essence, we were giving ourselves 30 minutes. And as I just spelled out, we need about 50 minutes of runtime to be successful. So cleaning that up will be massively helpful, and even just that unification of the times makes a difference, and I think we should see some results from that. But the other aspect of this is the ELC time doesn't allow us to perform secondary routes. So we have 6 buses last year, and we'll have 7 at the ELC at this point this year, that their arrival time and dismissal is 8 o'clock. And you can see why that's problematic for an 8:20 arrival time and an 8:30 arrival time. If we operate under the conventional framework of an hour, then clearly we're not leaving ourselves time. So the recommendation I'm making as it relates to the ELC is to push it back to elementary time. And that would be a 7:30 bus arrival and then a departure of 7:40. And that should free up several buses to perform secondary routes. And that gives us a framework to be more timely in our arrival. And as a secondary aspect of this, we know that our students are going to the elementary, and so as they advance into that framework, they will be prepared for that time frame that they're now getting into as they age out of the ELC and into the elementary level. But I would say, so the biggest recommendation on that front, ideally speaking, we always want to have an hour between routes, and so the 7:30 to 8:20 at high school is a difficult aspect to navigate, but I'm just naming that right now. But the bigger component of this is we're not leaving ourselves space in the first tier, because we're not actually operating as a first tier on the elementary level, and in realigning that at the elementary level is a segue into us having more coverages, and that means that we can space out our routes more or use our capacities more, and then hopefully at the end of that see a route reduction as well, but also just be more timely in our response. And that is something that we have to think about heavily, because we've got to be on time for all of our students. And the concession, of course, when you talk about this at the ELC level, is letting them know that this is in the best interest of all students, that we have to think operationally. So I've already said that there's standardized schools per dismissals we're looking at, and making sure that we're doing it in a timely way. The other part we were doing to make sure, and this is most specifically for the PM, to get our PM routes underway well, consistent bus slots across the district. So any bus slot that people pull into, the first slot should be first one everywhere. As it stands, some lots are 18, some are 1, and even 1 has bus numbers, which to me, I never understood why we would even consider that. But aligning that across there is important. But I also failed to mention one other thing, and I just want to go back to bell time recommendations that I just didn't mention a moment ago, which is this. If we do move the ELC time, as we move the ELC time backward, it does another thing that I didn't say, which is if their current dismissal time's 2:10, and if we move the start time back 30 minutes, the idea is that they're now 1:40. And although it's not quite an hour, that actually helps us to meaningfully cover elementary routes in the PM as well. So there's a secondary component in the morning that gets us coverages, but in the afternoon, there's a first tier dynamic that we need to be looking at also. So along with that and the consistent bus slots are meant to create more effective dismissals, but also to have students know where they're at. Your bus is always in slot, whatever. And our subs, when they go to schools, if it's a school, every slot the sub driver goes into, the first slot's one. So it helps to orient our staff toward that. And then just the last update with that part is that we're looking at a transportation handbook revision that we're doing, which I believe is on the consent agenda for the 11th of August anyway. And part of that will be putting that digitally on Vector Solutions. We already use Vector Solutions for our training, our Title IX, and the sort of things that we're required to do. And so it's always a tough sell when we try to get people to latch onto the technology, but we're already onto that technology. And so it's utilizing that framework to have a digital signature on handbooks that people can then review as well. And then the other section that I just wanted to mention was we're doing a couple things that I feel are not in the best interest of students' safety. And one of those things is we're allowing stops to be altered or shifted and managing schedules. So I can't tell you the number of times in my career where I've seen this in districts, whether my own or adjacent, that if we allow more than one stop location for AM and PM, that we end up with a lot of misplaced students. And we end up with, where is the student located at right now? Or the daycare closed today, can we just put them on the PM bus? Well, we haven't prepared for that and we haven't routed for that. And so we put drivers and students and schools in a position not to succeed when we do that. And so the other aspect of this that I want to really push forward is that we need to be looking at one-stop location as a procedural component to what we do, so that we're never uncertain about the student safety component of what we're doing. Also, that the safety is primary, but it improves our ridership accuracies and making sure we're running consistent routes. We keep our students from being confused in schools, from being confused at loading and dismissals. And again, it's about overall student safety. And then the expected outcomes, of course, is that we have all those things, which are predictable operations, predictable stops, and then we don't have space for a student on the PM because we don't route them for the AM, but we route them for the PM, or we go here on Tuesdays and Thursdays or every other week. And if you can imagine from the driver's standpoint, if you have 70 students on a bus, 65, 70 students on a bus, managing schedules across the spectrums of your routes, we're not setting people up for success either. We're not setting drivers up or students up for success, and we're creating dangerous situations where it's unnecessary. But again, our focus remains on the following aspects: safe and reliable transportation, our operational excellence and consistent procedures surrounding that, outstanding customer service, which is going to be, I think, as we get more consistent, plus we have office to address these components, then we have that. And then working with schools and families together and being communicative about what we do. That should be, I assume there will be some questions concerning this, so at this point I would just want to say thank you for letting me talk, and I'm happy to talk about any aspect that's been presented or move anything back to any slide.
How many bus drivers do we have right now, and how many do we need, or do we need to hire anymore?
82, and I think for the foreseeable future, the answer to that question is yes, we need to hire drivers. Part of how we've resolved that in the past is having staff drive, which is way less than ideal, right? If we're adding support services in the office, their purpose is to support students and families and drivers, and we remove them from that situation, then we stop doing that support. And so the past practice has been we just have to make it work, right? And we have to get students on, which of course I agree with. But we're not setting our drivers and students and people up for success when we're moving. So we're still resolving it that way. So absolutely, we want to do hiring for our drivers. One of the things we've been talking about that I've done in the past that I'd like to look at is a drive the bus event where we have people, the public, come and able to see what it's like to drive a bus. A fear of driving a large vehicle is a barrier. I want to remove that. So we have to get creative with that. But what we're talking about from the driver standpoint is a national problem. Yeah, if you look across the spectrum of the nation, it's a driver shortage everywhere, pretty much everywhere. So we will continue hiring, yes.
Yeah, I mean, when I go across other districts, I see buses out front saying we're hiring and everything else, so I just didn't know if we were way short or how.
So our highest route amount right now is in the neighborhood of about the number of drivers we have. And I think as a wise course of action, 15% of your driver pool that would be substitutes would be ideal. So when you do that math, that's about 12 more people. I would like to have a little more space than that, but if you do the math on the 80 for 15%, that's 12 people. So that 12 to 15 people range, we'd be living a lot larger than we are right now, for sure.
Are you still going to be utilizing the app, Here Comes the Bus, with the new Parent Square? Does that work together, or?
Those are disconnected, so just by way of system connections, the Here Comes the Bus app references the GPS provider, which is Synovia CalAmp, and CalAmp pulls that data from the routing system directly. That doesn't have any real bearing on that part. I'm learning that we have about 80% buy-in which is huge for this district.
I live by that app.
Anything that upsets the lives of families, especially unnecessarily, isn't something I'm going to suggest we do. And that parent app is key. It doesn't connect. The interface is not connected.
Yeah.
I do want to say, though, with Parent Square, that does allow us to have a messaging system that can get more granular with students and routes on the bus specifically, even with School Messenger as far as that's concerned. And I know that you've talked about this already previously, but one of the things about it is it's kind of clunky. It doesn't let us get as granular as we like. So we may, you don't want to send it out to high school and elementary because it's just bus 120, but sometimes that's what you're into. I can tell you it gets more granular in those aspects, but as far as its connection to the GPS and the interface, that Synovia references directly the routing segmentation of what we do, so that shouldn't have any bearing on it.
Okay. And then to go back to when you were talking about one student, one address. So currently we have kiddos that can opt to go to 2 different addresses, or maybe 2 different parents' homes, or a daycare, or what are we currently doing? Because I wasn't aware that you could have more than one address.
Yeah.
Anything they want. I'm not being trite when I say that. It's been a lot. I should say that differently. It's not been regulated very closely. And so if we've had people who want to say, this week I'm at mom and dad's, or Tuesday and Thursday I go to dad's house, but on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but on this week I do this, but on the following week I do that. That's the dynamic we're into. So I think it's been a lot more free range than maybe the perception, it sounds like, than the perception's been. And I can tell you just last year I've learned that we had at least 2 instances that were a little more harrowing about finding a student. And I can tell you for the 2 that I know about, there were probably other 30, 40, 50 of them. It's just a bad practice for families and for students. And I know on the surface it feels like we're not conceding what we want to do, service for our families, but I actually think this does them a disservice because we're putting their kids at risk, and that's just not the place we want to be with students.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I share real quickly. Understand something, that Michael has come in and it's been less than a month. He's done yeoman's work. And thus far, we've been meeting constantly. Michael and I have at least a weekly meeting already slated. Obviously, there are goals that we have. He has a vision. We want to be very consistent in what we do. He wants to be consistent. And again, ultimately, he has what we all want, and that is what is best for kids. We want to make sure that we are providing the very best environment. The kids are the bus driver is the first person they see in the morning, and it's the last person they see in the evening. And again, we want to make sure that we are providing the very best service. But we also want to make sure that we're running efficiently. And again, that's what Michael has been charged with looking at what we are currently doing, current practices. What are some things that we need to obviously adjust? Those adjustments need to be made. And he's certainly done that and stepped up. So I just want to commend Michael and Nate and all the work that their office has done up to this point. And it's exciting, they're reinvigorated, and it's exciting, we're ready, obviously, to have a great school year. So I just wanted to make sure I shared that with the board.
So two things. One, do we share sub-drivers with like Sheridan or Noblesville or whatever the case may be? Like substitute teachers or whatever the case may be?
The issue with that relates around them doing their annual safety meeting, which some drivers call their yellow card, their ASM. They're required by the state to have an ASM on file with a particular school district. And that gets messy. It gets messy from the standpoint of making sure that their yellow card is at the place they work. But the other part of that we get into is because they're operating commercial motor vehicles. There's an FMCSA, a Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's component, where we're required to do drug compliance for those individuals as well. So that gets a little bit strange and messy when it comes to that from the CDL standpoint. But the bigger barrier is just that the ASM registration, that yellow card, it can't be held in two places simultaneously.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For the new, oh, sorry.
And Nathan was mentioning that that's particularity to school bus operation, right? The annual safety meeting is the one that the state requires for school bus drivers. So if it's like a dump truck driver or another CDL holding license holder, we still have to work around the drug compliance part of that because we have to have them, if they're operating under safety sensitive function, they have to be on the drug pool. But they don't have that secondary yellow card, so we are able to utilize like a dump truck driver or something like that. In fact, I talked to one of our people today who's a substitute driver. She was talking about her dump truck driving in November slows down, so that's when she kind of comes to us full time. So we rattle every cage we can, I can tell you. So
Right. And the other one is, I'd like to come see your building sometime. I've not been in the building yet, so I'll probably shoot you. August 4th. Well, that was for the bus drivers. I didn't know if that.
there's a ribbon cutting on the 4th.
Yeah.
And-
Okay.
And I think that it was scheduled for 8 o'clock. The actual driver meeting doesn't start till 9, so
Okay.
the building,
Okay.
it's a great building.
Chef Paul, probably. So for the routes, with all the schools changing and transitioning, are the bus drivers staying in their said neighborhoods, or are they staying with the building? Just curious.
Yeah, so that's a question that we're facing. In fact, I responded to a parent from Viking Meadows today. So I'm aware we have some dynamics. The difficulty with this, kind of conversation is we can't do that. If you're adding 2 new building locations, by nature of that, we can't. And so those 2 locations have about 16 buses in total at this juncture between them. That clearly means shifting staff around. And when you do that, we need someone that's vacated a space to be in that space, and then that means moving another set of people or groups of people. And so when you do that, that has a domino effect about the changes. But what's more is, with the new elementary locations, you want to have a consideration, where's your starting point for your next route, right? We want to be efficient. So if we have a new elementary that they're at, we make sure that their starting point pairs well with their secondary route. And that by nature means going through and looking at the pairings of those routes to make sure we're most efficient. So as much as I'd like to say drivers do not like change, none of us love change, but drivers in particular, they struggle with that. So I've communicated with them that this is a full rebid, so they've been transparent regarding that conversation. And it's by nature of us making a shift like this. And the truth is, when we look at the middle school next year, we'll have an eye on the same thing. And hopefully that gives us some normalization after that. But unfortunately, every district I've gone to, we always have this discussion about what's the fairest way, and we always come back to the starting point of seniority being the fairest way. And I've always opened it up, the dialogue. Is there another way to do this? And please, let's talk through that. But that remains the best consistent way to do it. And so we will have to go through a full rebid on these routes, because as much as I love the families to be back with their drivers, we have to account for our new buildings and our new dynamics. And so by nature of that, we're going to be making shifts.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, just looking through all you've done, kind of echoing what Greg said, it looks like you've done so much in such a little time. I really appreciate all the work you've done into it. And seemingly little things like the ridership survey. I'm shocked we have not thought of that before. That just sounds like such an obvious, great way to start, and it looks like you're putting a lot of time and thought into that, and the safety of the students, and even just making the bus drivers, I think it sounds like you're really making them feel heard and supported and keeping them in mind a lot, which I think, since there's a bus driver shortage, that's a big piece of trying to keep them. So I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I just don't see philosophically how we can tell drivers to give their best to students if we don't do that for them, right? We can't ask that of them if we're not engendering that attitude when they're at our building. So there are processes and procedures that I think they're not going to be, that are in the handbook that they're not familiar with. But I try to always frame it back to them with the students. You want behaviors and rules on your bus. We got to have frameworks here too. And over time, you find that the students actually want that, and I think the drivers do too, but they'll be supported in that as well. So, no, I'm excited about it. There's plenty to do, but I think we're making headway.
And having that ridership, and Michael and I have had this conversation, so the way it really should be designed, so if we really truly have a ridership, we can take that data, and that starts in March. I mean, it starts early and starting to build that up for the following year. So by the time we hit the summer, they really have, a good majority of that solidified. And so that's what he's working on right now. That's what he's starting from scratch and doing. And so, but come next spring, he would have that ridership database set up and ready to go.
Good job.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Thanks,
All
Nathan.
right, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. We're going to transition quickly to CSO. They're outside. They're going to come in.
I don't need to see it that bad. He can-
Okay, so we have our friends from CSO and Mike Luce from Meyer Najum and Fred from Context Design. So Stephanie and Brent from CSO to the left or the west, and Mike and then Fred. They're going to give us some updates on the high school, which I'll just start with. We were trying to site design that before we took a step back. Then if we have time, we'll give some updates on our rooms at the schools and Quadplex, right? Our community rooms.
Yes, well, technically, that's the opposite order of the presentation, but I can go that way if you want me to.
Brent, take it over.
Well, thank you guys for having us tonight. Excited to give you kind of an update on what we've been working on the last, I'm trying to think, we were here in March or April, I think, maybe late April. So it's been a few months, and we've continued to be working behind the scenes, getting things moving. So we'll talk about Monon Athletics, the baseball fields at Shamrock Springs, and then dive into the main topic of kind of where we're at on the high school piece. So I'll try to go through the first components pretty quickly. There's not a ton of changes there, but just kind of show you some of the design that's progressing and moving forward. One of the big things that we've done over the last few months is we've brought on our construction partner for the Monon Athletics. So Garmon Construction is joining us in a CMC role for this project. This is the latest up-to-date aerial, very similar to what you guys have seen before. I'll run through the base scope there on the left quickly. So enhancing the baseball field, so that's number one, kind of in the bottom left corner, and prepping that for high school use as we move the high school field off campus over to here. So we're turfing that field, dugouts, backstops, new fencing, all of the kind of just to bring it up to a high school performance level. So that's kind of item one there. Item 2 is to add spectator seating to the, one of the existing multipurpose fields that we installed last year so that we can move soccer and lacrosse from the main high school campus over to this campus. Those fields are already turfed and lit from the last project, so we're just adding those spectator enhancements. Item number 3, the new natural turf field. So that's a grass field. So we've discovered there is still a need for real grass in athletics, and so we're trying to create that venue within the district. So that will have it will be lit, it will have seating, it will have a press box, just like all of the other fields, but have a natural grass sports turf installed. Use, I will delegate that back to the administration as well as Mr. Tebby at the high school, but I think rugby has been part of the conversation on that field, just as the desire to have, they prefer to play on a grass field versus the synthetic turf field. So I think the scheduling will be handled by the athletic department, though. We've also talked about concessions and restrooms for that building, so I may touch on that later when we get to the community rooms as well. But right now, we're thinking we might be able to flip the spectators to the other side of the field and then provide restrooms from the new community room space so that they're close by, not have to build another outbuilding near that field to serve those purposes. So still working through that a little bit. We will be fencing the perimeter primarily of the west side of the campus, all the athletic fields, to help with ticketing and security of the facility. That's something that the athletic department's been very adamant about, making sure we get included and fence and gate correctly so that they can open and close parts of the facility for when different events are occurring. Expand parking, so we're going to add, I think, close to 150 parking spaces by quick math, just to expand the parking facilities with these new fields and new uses. And then there will be a new support building. That's item number 6. I'll show you a quick floor plan of that next. And then the new community room on Monon Trail, which I'll show you here in just a second. And the last thing on this list is an alternate. So the 2 remaining softball fields there, the number 8s, those are currently still grass fields. We're going to do an alternate bid to turf those 2 fields just to see what the price would be and decide if that's something advantageous for Westfield to proceed with. As I mentioned, we are planning for a support building. So based off comments we received from you guys the last time we were here, the desire to have some restrooms closer to those multi-purpose fields, especially as we plan to have more spectators around. So the right image here is a floor plan. It's a very simple building, 4 single-user restrooms. The high school has asked for a trainer's room to be out here. So as we have more high school athletes on this campus, the need for that space was just going to be become more and more necessary. So there's a 2-bed, basically 2 tape bed trainer room here, sink, ice, just kind of the minimum requirements they need to be functional. And then a small kind of accessory concessions or vending area. This will be primarily for packaged food only. We won't be doing any food prep. The main concession stand in the current quadplex will still serve as the main concession stand. This is just kind of a secondary location for some additional concessions to occur. The bottom left image there is a quick rendering we put together of what that facility will possibly look like. The top image you see is the existing quadplex building. So we're basically matching that language very closely so that it feels cohesive and aligns with the architectural style that's out there today.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So usually when I go to other high schools and if their facilities are off campus, like these are transitioning to be for high school athletes, there's usually locker rooms. Are we not entertaining that idea anywhere?
So we discussed that early on in the project process, and I think because we believe that this will be a temporary facility for the high school to live until a long-term athletics complex can be planned and paid for and constructed. The investment of millions of dollars in a locker room facility, we weren't confident in making that investment yet. As those plans come together, the decision will be made to either land those locker rooms on this site and build a permanent facility, or to build that facility wherever the permanent high school facilities land. We have talked about, okay, what do we do in the meantime? And is there a temporary solution or a milestone solution that we can provide? We are planning to install some infrastructure that if there are any of the current portables available in the district that are no longer being used because we've expanded those facilities, that maybe they could locate one or more of those on this campus to provide some clubhouse, team room. Still not gonna have bathrooms or locker rooms, but a place that kids can leave their things. The other thing we've kicked around is can we leverage this facility or Monon Trail Elementary as a short-term solution to let kids in and have a place to change. Maybe it's not ideal, but for a short-term solution, that's kind of what we've talked about with the district thus far. Community rooms. So on Monon, you can see that number 7 there is where the community room will land. And then for Maple Glen is the other elementary where we're planning the community room. You can kind of see it there on the south side. And then to the right is the floor plan of that facility and what it will, how it will lay out. So this should be very familiar if you've been in any of the other existing community rooms. The layout is identical. So a large community gathering space in the center. There's an office there for before and after school, some storage, and then a small kitchenette. Restrooms that face right onto that community room, and then a lobby that exits out to the outside so that it can be secured separately from the main building. So pretty simple layout. Again, trying to bring these two elementaries into par with the other elementary schools in the district. And then as I mentioned, one of the things we're discussing is at Monon, is there a way to reorient this restroom so that it faces the lobby where you come in and secure it from the community room so that restroom could be available after hours for use? We've got to talk to before and after school on that, because then if we reorient it away from the community room, then they can't necessarily supervise it during before and after school and see whether that's going to be an issue. So we're still working through that and making sure we ask the right questions to the right people before we kind of commit to that. Shamrock Springs, so that is the new quadplex next to the new elementary school. So as the elementary school finishes and the existing building comes down, we're planning for a 4-quad youth baseball complex, baseball softball complex there. This will replace the existing quadplex that existed before the new elementary school was constructed. So right now, it's 4 fields. We've validated those measurements with WISI to make sure that they meet the requirements. So the 2 fields on the left are actually a little bit longer, which allows them to play some of the higher age groups here. And then the 2 on the right are a little bit shorter in distance. The parking areas, we've been working with the existing parking, and we think we're going to be able to maintain most of that existing front parking lot that's there today. Probably mill and resurface it and restripe it. But that will, again, leverage that investment that's existing, provides us about 140 parking spots for those fields. That's really close, so that's really nice. Additionally, the district put in a temporary bus lot on that west side of the building during construction. We're going to keep that and kind of do the same thing, going to restripe it and reuse it for parking, and that's another 50 spots. So almost 200 spots for those fields, plus the elementary has additional overflow parking, so we think there's ample parking for this facility. The last piece that I'll highlight is there in the center. We are going to build a support building. That building is going to be pretty identical to the one that's out here in the middle of the quadplex, and similar to what's at Grand Park. So the floor plan of that facility kind of looks like this. There's a group restroom, men's and women's, and a custodial closet, a large concession stand with an overhang for protection, and then a large storage space. WISI was super excited about the storage space. They also have an existing garage on the Shamrock site that I think we're going to be able to keep and maintain for them as well, which they were pretty excited about. And then the last piece on the upper level is the press box. So that press box then has views out to all 4 fields, and they can officiate and regulate all the games from there.
Will there be scoreboards out there?
There will be simple scoreboards at each of those fields, yes. I believe there were. I'd have to go back
Very
and.
basic.
I think one of the things, and I don't know, Greg, if you want to speak to the partnership We will put in some of the infrastructure for maybe future lights. And if they want to upgrade the scoreboard, that would be something WISI would fundraise for. Is that true?
That's accurate, yeah, yeah. So the infrastructure, the conduit and everything that would be run there for them to be able to install lights if they so choose, or also with the scoreboards, if they want to upgrading type of scoreboards, they would have that ability through a capital campaign in which to do that.
One of the things, and again, I don't know, I wasn't at the last meeting, but we did tear down their building that they built themselves, I believe. And so we're trying to, as we work through this, say, okay, where's the take and give? I think we asked them, we're locating some batting cages, but they'll install the batting cages, same way with the lights. So I think there's some trade-off back and forth that as we price this out, but we felt like the building, we owed them a building. Their building might have been a little bit bigger, but this one's probably more efficiently designed.
Yeah, I think we decided square footage was about the same, but the footprint of theirs was larger. And I guess just from an overall process standpoint, we provided documents to Garmong for the total scope of this project last Friday to start putting an estimate together to see what the total magnitude is of this investment. And then that helps with the conversation with WISI of, we're doing this, you're doing that, or how are we financing this? I think that was Skillman.
You designed it, though.
Yes, we designed it.
Will part of the pricing include alternative bids so they understand the exact cost for the lighting, and if they wanted to launch a capital campaign or could afford to
I'm
do
sure we can get that
immediately?
broken out if we need to, yeah.
I think that would be helpful to
Okay.
know exactly what their mark is.
I think that's also helpful for our board.
Yeah.
As we partner with them.
Right, yeah.
If there are
agreed.
things that we can do to facilitate that, any information we have in that area will give you more information to help them in that partnership, right?
Mhm.
Yep.
John, can I ask another question? So looking at this map of Shamrock, so the new building obviously has playground space somewhere on the back side of the building, I'm not sure where. But to the left of the science lab pond, there was like a nature thing, is that still there?
Yep,
And all those things will still be utilized for the school?
yes.
Okay. Thanks. Are you gonna redo the building? that's falling down?
Mr. Hedges left us as a parting gift, 3-page document of things that needed to happen to be put back in place, and he said he would be happy to come over and supervise that as we clean this back up. So things not to forget about, but he's on it, and obviously he still lives in our community. So when we get to that point, we'll reach out to him.
Yeah. And the main playground, I believe, is this loop you see on this side by the field, and then the elementary playground or kindergarten playground's up on this side, if I remember correctly. Okay, so high school. When we came a few months ago, we kind of talked through, we'd kind of gotten a conceptual plan together, what I'll call schematic design. We'd had some floor plans that we shared with you. We assembled all that information with our design consultants, gave a package to Meyer Najum, and Meyer Najum put some dollars and cents to it, and then started also looking at construction sequencing. When we put that package together, we did design really the entire high school site long-term build out, just because we felt it prudent to know, where are we going long-term to make sure we're making the right moves first. So we were unsurprised to find out that we were way over our kind of, I won't say over budget, but over our initial kind of project allocation, because we were looking well beyond project 1. We were looking at project 2, 3, and 4 at the same time. So that process was, I think, really valuable for us, because we started to see a few areas where we questioned some of the design decisions we have made, because we weren't sure it was the best use of dollars, as well as it allowed Meyer Najum to look at the construction phasing of how we might how we should build and construct the different pieces, the different constraints that the sites and programmings create on a construction timeline, and then that also then influence the design on the backside of, well, maybe we should package these things together because that's how the construction sequencing is going to flow. So it kind of made us take a step back and say, hey, let's take a step back and make sure we're doing the right things in the right places, and there aren't any better alternatives, and we've explored all our options. So from there, you'll see like the first two packages, those have been released. The chiller has been replaced at the high school, so it is up and running. And then the interior renovations, those bid and are now under construction. I've actually got a few photos in here just since I had the opportunity to throw these in. This is the MPIF, so they have torn up that entire floor. They've cut out the existing concrete slab to put in the new wood floors that'll go in there. This space will receive a completely new coat of paint, new graphics, and that we're replacing all of the they're not cages, the netting around the outside that separates everything. So it will look pretty much brand new when we're done. So we're excited about the progress there. And I'm making promises for Mike that he's actually already made himself, but this just should be done by fall break. And so they'll have that turned over and occupied after that.
That's right.
This is one of the classrooms on the first floor of the green wing. That's where we're starting with the classroom renovations. So they have demoed out all of the existing equipment, the existing flooring. So we'll come back with new paint, carpet, marker boards. We're going to be remounting all of the technology devices, et cetera. So, and we're also working through with the high school admin team now on furniture. So the furniture will be updated to match what's in the newest edition. So when this first phase is done, it'll essentially feel like you're in one building, right? It'll feel just like the newest edition in the high school. And then restrooms, one of the bigger pain points for the high school. We have started demo on the first one of those, so you can see this is well in progress, so they'll continue that work on forward. And we'll, as those classrooms finish and as these restrooms finish, then we'll sequence our way through other parts of the building to work through all of the rest of the space. Okay, so the bigger piece of this, as I mentioned, so this was the site master plan we brought you in May, April, and very similar thoughts on the major program pieces didn't change. There was a few things that we started to question as Meyer Najm started putting dollars and cents to it that I'll highlight here. The first of which, the South Academic Edition in this scenario, every major utility that feeds the high school runs right under that proposed addition. So in theory, we're investing $2 to $3 million in underground infrastructure just to build in that location. And so that was one of the questions we asked ourselves is that a good use of resources, or is there a better location that we could build classrooms that doesn't require us to invest those dollars? So that's something we explored in what I'm going to call Site Master Plan 2.0. The other piece of that is, as we looked at, the circulation for buses and visitor parking, main entrance, student entrance, how do we circulate to South Campus in the future? We started questioning some of the logic on how parking and buses were placed in this. I think the high school currently is very functional, but nobody loves that the buses are in the front of the building. It's just not the aesthetic that everybody feels like. It doesn't feel like you're coming to a grand experience when you have to park in the bus lot and walk your way in. So we were kind of be thoughtful about that moving forward. Additionally, the sequencing piece of how do we, if we're going to build this athletics addition and move utilities around to get out of the way of a future competition gym, we're going to take away the existing student parking. Well, then I need to provide new student parking before I can take away parking. And so trying to look at those numbers in a way that we don't ever take parking away because you're a growing high school who's already tight on parking. So that seems like we've got to be thoughtful about that. So as I said, 2.0, some of this is very similar and some of this is very different. So as you see, north is up or to the right of your image, and I should point over here instead of over there. You can see the north end of the site is very similar to the last proposal, so there's not a lot of change over there. I think that still works fairly well. Most of the change is going to be situated on the south end. So as I mentioned, the South Academic Addition here, all of those utilities, we said, is that a good use of dollars? And so instead of that South Addition, what we looked at is an addition on the front of the existing building. So that centralizes all of those classrooms, which we feel like is a really great place for them, especially with the heart of the Learning Center kind of right there. Allows us to maybe to relocate the main entry and kind of redefine how that operates, which I think is good. Will allow, and I think the high school admin team is trying to get their head around this, it's because it's a bigger question of how they're going to operate as an admin team in a high school of this size that eventually has 2 buildings, has multiple entries, of how they're going to man those and administrate throughout the building. So I think that's been a positive. So by moving that South Academic Addition, that's allowed us to move buses to the back of the school instead of the front. So that's not necessarily a final layout. You see some green there. That likely has more pavement than green, because we're also thinking that's probably event parking for football, or maybe that's a tailgate parking lot at some point. So a nice amenity there. What's really nice about the buses in that spot is, as we talked about, converting Shamrock Alley into a pedestrian pathway, we're now dumping all of those kids right there onto that pathway. So whether they're going North Campus or South Campus, everybody's kind of got equal travel distance. It's central between the 2 buildings, which is also nice. And it's allowed us to create, you can kind of see Student Plaza here, kind of a nice space between the 2 buildings where kids can maybe linger and gather outside of the building before they enter. So as we've thought about how that operates, that feels like a really nice student-centered circulation path on site. And then allows us to push visitors and staff to the front of the building. So we're creating a nice separation between students and visitors and staff. So it just really started to kind of flow. The admin team at the high school really started to get some energy around this. I won't say it was the first time, but it was one of the first times that they really kind of seemed energized about the direction of where things were moving. And so I think that was really, really positive. I'll flip to a quick floor plan here just to show you some of the other kind of opportunities this created. So today, this is the Learning Center here. So your front door, I'm sorry, I keep moving the pointer on you guys. The front door sits here today. You come into this reception area. So we'd be pulling off the front of the building and creating a really wide hallway across the front to connect the cafeteria and the existing auditorium commons area. And then we've got 10 classrooms situated here with some flex space outside. So the layout's a little different than the existing academic pods, but has a lot of the same amenities. And what that large corridor allows us to do, as we've been talking about how we circulate kids through this building, is instead of having to go through one of the existing hallways and try to widen it, is it creates that circulation bypass without us having to do that. So it's kind of doing some double duty by bringing that academic addition to the front. So I think that's a really high positive. And if you think of the athletic addition, right, the cafeteria then is going to flow straight up to the future competition gym and another large hallway. So it really creates this nice U-shaped flow through the entire building. And then obviously this will be a 2-story addition, so that gives us a total of about 21 classrooms. This is the second story here. And one of the things that we would plan to do is in that large hallway is create some high windows that would bring some daylight down in, so that on the first floor where those the art rooms and the offices today have windows outside, they would still get some borrowed light. It wouldn't feel like they were being buried inside the building. Yeah, so that's the design update. I'm gonna let Mike kind of run through some of the phasing implications as he worked through that pretty tirelessly, and hopefully you can kind of see how we tied some of what he's finding and what we're to what we did on the design side, because I think it's been a really good collaboration between our 2 entities.
So I love logistics. So you guys, I'm going to try to stay out of the weeds as much as possible, but if you have questions, please ask, because whenever you go into a high school that's landlocked and you're talking about as much exterior work as this is, there needs to be thought and process behind how we're going to achieve this so that everyone is still able to be successful. So like what goes in behind the thought process of doing this, of school has to stay open, academics are priority, how are we protecting those athletic seasons prioritizing construction during the non-main seasons. And then the other part that we haven't necessarily talked about is that there is a marathon pipeline that runs through your campus, that when you start talking about master planning, when is the right time for that to be dealt with? So those are all things that are put into consideration that we need to think about as we're designing, as we're running the phasing. So all things that are in addition to just the general utility work that needs to always stay active and so on. So I'm not expecting that you guys are able to read everything on this, but this is just a full glance at basically the timeline of what we're looking at. So all the work that we're about to discuss, the earliest start would be April 1st of 2027, and the very end date would be August 1st of 2029 of what I'm going to share with you guys today. So just as we talk, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind if that's what we're talking about. So what I'm about to show you are just clips of segments of time. So basically, what would the project site look like at any given time during the construction project? So what we intend to start with, there is a new, what I'm calling the West Loop Road, that would provide access around the school, provide access into the stadium temporarily while we're doing construction. We would begin with the bus lot, knowing that that bus lot we need to take over eventually as we are working on that front addition. And then also starting a south locker room at the south of the varsity field, knowing that we need to take over a portion of the locker room to their existing locker room to the north for the athletic addition. So this timeline is from just April through June. So basically, once we enter into the summer seasons, which ultimately the trigger for this is when baseball season and softball season is complete, we begin to look at the future practice fields that would go on the north side. Is that purple section that you guys are kind of seeing, as well as starting to think about, if we're about to take away a lot of parking, where are we going to give parking so that we can take it away? So this is step one in doing so. And basically what you guys are looking at is the summer. So this is during the summer, and then on the first day of school, the loop road would be turned over, likely with some sort of temporary connection to that existing lot, because eventually this lot will get redone. But the road, the bus lot would be functioning, and we would then have likely some temporary visitors entrance to the south, where these students from the bus would be then entering. And it's kind of hard to see on this because it's gray, but at this specific point, which actually, I'll take that back, at the beginning of the summer is when we would come in and start that front addition to the southeast corner of the high school. So it would continue into the start of the school year with those temporary measures to the south of the building. Once we get through November, that basically gets us through the entire varsity football season, and we turn over that north parking, which is also equivalent to the Indiana paving season, if you guys ever want to geek out about some asphalt, where we're still continuing the construction on the locker rooms to the south. We're continuing construction on the front addition. But this November through July, and really it will likely be early spring, is when we start looking at when does it make sense to move the marathon pipeline once into the final location of where it needs to lie. This is somewhat of a prolonged duration, and what will follow it is there are utilities that need to be routed where that marathon pipeline currently is. So once that is moved, utility work will immediately follow, and then the start of the new athletic addition would then begin. So ultimately, the driving force of when we can start the athletic addition lies with how fast we can start the marathon pipeline work.
Yeah, I would just add, Mike, our conversations with Marathon to date have essentially said it will take us 12 months till Marathon can design whatever the changes that we request them to make to that pipeline are. So if we initiate it today, it would take them a year before they would hand us the designs that say this is what you have to build. And so that's going into this construction sequencing. And right now, it aligns pretty well with how long it takes us to build new parking before we can take parking away. But it certainly is extending, I think, what we originally thought the timeline would be to get that athletics addition started.
Very well said. The other piece of this is there would be a point in time when the locker room would get turned over in time for track season. So this locker room would be done roughly by the March of 28 timeframe. And then turning the page into August of 28, basically what this is showing is we have turned over the parking lot area and kind of your entrance into the stadium for varsity football season, where you're able to have as much normalcy as you possibly could with us still being on site for that football season. And then at the end of October, which is roughly the fall break time, is when we would be turning over that front addition, which is your classrooms that Brent was mentioning earlier. So during this period of time, the main focus would continuing to be on the athletics additions while we turn whatever this space is from the temporary condition back to normal. And then once we enter into March, so once it warms back up, that's when we start focusing on the student plaza to the south. And then basically whatever is to happen with the south parking or what is remaining on the site would be at the very end. And then once I turn the page, you'll see this, but we would be finishing the athletic addition for the start of school year in fall of 29.
Do we have plans for locker room yet? What it looks like?
Yeah, so that north addition is, so I guess two things. Yes, we have plans there. The north addition is what's proposed for the final football locker room facility. As we've talked about it from our initial estimates, we need to scale back some of the scope on that based on budgetary constraints, but I think the one thing we have identified is there is going to be a pinch point for locker room space for football. And so that may mean that the south locker room building that's long-term meant for visitors, we may outfit it a little bit larger so that it can serve as a home locker room for a season. Or maybe we build a larger storage room that they use for lockers that still has access to the locker room for that one season. We've got to figure out that pinch point. Because the north locker room building that exists today will have to be taken offline before we have the new locker rooms done. So we've got to figure that piece out. We've been working with Andy, and he seems flexible. He's like, as long as we communicate and we have everybody prepared, like we can get there. We just have to have a plan. So the last thing that I would highlight is, as you saw Mike go through, like every inch of campus, right, was highlighted at some point. That doesn't necessarily mean we're disrupting every point of campus. We fully intend to try to preserve as much of your existing investment in that campus as we can. So like on the south end around the performing arts, that parking lot's likely to remain fairly unchanged, except for where we might be extending pedestrian pathway to get to South Campus eventually. One of the things I didn't mention in the first time we talked about design, the front detention basin, the dry detention basin, for as long as I have worked at Westfield High School, everyone has said, why isn't that paved? So we have talked about that. There is a dollar. So as we start to weigh cost versus parking spaces, almost like what's the cost per parking space, we're hopeful that we can weigh what's the added cost for the 300 spaces here versus an extra 300 spaces further north, depending on how many parking spaces we can work out in the front of the building. So some of that I think is just optics, right? Everyone has said, as long as I can remember, let's pave it, pave paradise, right? But there's probably also something nice about having a little green in the front of your high school. So we're gonna work through that, and it may ultimately we bid it as an alternate, which we did in 2017, and then have regretted that we didn't take that cheap price to pave that. So we're gonna work through that, but right now we're hopeful that maybe we can maintain some of that investment instead of having to, again, bury all those dollars underground. I cannot promise that the parking lot design can address all that, but Fred? So, yeah. I know, I mean, in Shamrock Alley for a long time was one of those cut-throughs where kids fly through, so we'll be thoughtful as we think about the West Drive of how do we either gate or prohibit or to slow down traffic as it's trying to come around that side.
Somehow make the parking spaces like one way, right? Like, you know, when you go to Menards,
Mhm.
and one way is.
One way in, one way out. Mhm. So give me that real quick. I'm gonna go back just for a second. So as this ties to the phasing, I'm gonna go back to here. So essentially, we have completed and designed package 1 and construction package 1. Package 2 is under construction. And so based off Meyer Najam's phasing, what I anticipate us now looking at is package 3, which is the west site package, which includes the south locker room building, the bus parking lot, the west drive, will be the next thing we're looking at and trying to get that out this fall. From there, we'll look at the academic addition and north site package, probably winter of '27, so early January, February of this year of trying to get that out to bid. And then the athletics addition and center site package, so that would be the athletics addition and just north of the athletics area, the kind of that core where the marathon pipeline is, summer 2027 release. And then the south site package, which is that last piece, like a winter 2029 or so. So that aligns with kind of how us releasing packages in alignment with how Meyer Najam thinks they can bid them and build them, so that we're not necessarily trying to push everything out the door at once and asking contractors to hold pricing for 24 months before they can start something. So I think that works really well. It helps the design team focus our efforts. So obviously, though, to meet that first deadline of fall 2026, Mike has told me, hey, if you could have it done by the end of September, that'd be great. So that's going to be here very quick. And what I can admit to you right now, what we still owe you is what does this plan cost? And we're still working on that. We are hopeful to come back to you guys with a dollar amount attached to each of those packages, if that makes sense, so that we can make educated decisions on how we're financing with Greg and bonding all of the different pieces and making sure that we're being prudent with the dollars. And making sure that we do have some of that back and forth with the user groups of the facilities, that we're not, you know, Santa Claus. We're not giving them everything they want, but we're giving them everything they need to make the campus great. So, any other questions on the high school?
Yeah, so just like, how many rooms and bathrooms are under renovation now? Like, they're not gonna be done by school, obviously.
Correct. So
When
I
you're
think we're
adding-
doing one at a time.
So
One classroom and one
Well, 8
there
classrooms.
are 8 classrooms and 1 bathroom at a time.
so is that why we have the portables there now? And
Yes.
okay.
So basically, it is it's a
Yeah.
tiered, or it's a level. So I believe whatever wing we are in, we either have the first floor or second floor, and that's entirely isolated, separated, with permanent or not semi-permanent walls, so that students don't have access to those spaces and contractors don't have access to the students. And then it's all, even during the school day, we're able to continue construction with minimal impact to the student education impact. So,
Yeah, so I think it's first floor green wing is right now. So after that one is done, which is, I think, fall break, is when that turns over, they'll go to the second floor of the green wing, and then they'll go to the gold wing first floor, and then gold wing second floor. And then I think that terminates towards the beginning of summer, and over the summer, they'll grab some of those more main corridor classrooms and hallways that need to get done. So let me go back forward. So from there, just as a general FYI, what's coming up, as you guys have been talking about already, Westfield Middle School East. So the plan is to get that one, that plan started moving once we kind of figure out our procurement method. And then Washington Woods Elementary and Oak Trace Elementary additions and renovations to reprogram those for 5th grade. Those should be getting started this fall as well. That's it.
Can you remind me why Washington Woods, Oak Trace need construction and others don't for 5th grade?
So we have, in the master plan, there's plans to get to all of the elementaries. Washington Woods and Oak Trace are going first because they are the oldest. So they are due for their, I don't want to say end of life, but their mid-cycle refresh, as it were. Their mechanical systems, casework, flooring, restrooms are all due to be updated because their infrastructure is the oldest. So we line those out in the master plan with the age of the building. So I think the other, Washington Woods, Oak Trace, Maple Glen, and Monon are next fall. So they'll be fall of '28, we'll start those.
This will also be given those buildings time to live with create, figure out what
Right.
what changes are needed, and then that footprint will just be replicated across the district.
Yeah, yeah. And there'll probably be some small tweaks as we talk about specific programs or why they are prototypes. There are some minor differences between each campus, like the kindergarten wings are all a little different. So yeah, but that's the intent, is to try to be as consistent as possible. I imagine we'll try to engage all of the principals as we design the first one so that everybody's gotten input as we kick this off.
Also, there might be some site limitations
That too.
that have to make them tweak a little different, just
Sure.
how where certain things are
On each
located.
site.
They're all kind of unique that way.
Mhm.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you.
I don't,
Thank you, guys.
if there are no questions, I think that we can end the work session.
Fred, I have a question. The other day, someone asked the surface material for the middle school west, what was the turf being used for the football versus softball, and someone couldn't answer the question. So could you elaborate the materials being used out there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the turf is actually an exact replica of the turf that is at the high school that
So
we
the
just put down.
coconut-
So same, yep, so it's the same dual fiber.
Is that what's out here as well?
Yes.
On these
Yeah.
two?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
Like the regular turf, like the old high school
Rubber
turf,
turf.
would have to be resurfaced or fixed up every so often. Does this last longer, or?
so the turf warranties at the vintage that your high school had been at, about 8 years is what you would normally get for the life cycle. The current turf, we ask for a 10-year warranty with that, and you will get 10 years when properly maintained. And there's no question that your facilities team is interested in getting every inch of life out of those. They do a great job maintaining them compared to a lot of your peer schools. So it is a dual fiber product, which has got a monofilament, monofilament and a slit film. The only reason I'm telling you that is it gets texture to the turf, which helps with ball roll. And not all fields do that. So you'll get on some synthetic fields where you'll kick a soccer ball, it will roll and it will never stop. There's no friction. The ball it plays too fast. So we use a textured fiber on your fields to make sure that the ball roll is as accurate as it can be.
That might affect some scholarships.
It could, it could, hopefully in a positive way. Yeah, hopefully in a positive way.
So that's the surface being used at all of the west campus?
Yeah,
All
so
fields?
on your diamond sports, you do use a slit film, because and where a fielder, say a second baseman, is digging in over and over and over again in the same spot, that dual fiber is not as durable to that exact replicated. So where you're gonna kick for a field goal, as an example, you wanna make sure that's really durable. What we do is we put an organic infill in those, and that has two benefits. One, that organic infill doesn't float, so it's a fibrous product. So on your a typical field you might be at, say if you went to Brownsburg, they use rubber and sand. So when they groom those fields, they simply move that rubber and sand around to level it off. What we've done in your fields, it's a little bit newer technology, is you've used a fiber infill. It drops the temperature about 20 degrees. So if you've ever walked on a synthetic field, you know how hot it gets. So while it is a little bit of a cost upgrade, it returns dividends very quickly, right? So you're dropping the temperature, that'll reduce your fatigue injuries, and it'll also help with the maintenance, because it doesn't float. That rubber isn't constantly moving around, it stays in place. So you guys made a really smart investment, and that's on all of your fields, whether they're diamond sports or whether they're field sports.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
One more question. So are the new softball fields out here that are turfed, is that the same material out there?
Mhm. Yeah, you definitely went to state-of-the-art, and you'll get the 10 years that you're expecting out of those. If you were to put me on the spot, I think you're gonna see with the turf advancements that we've seen and the quality of the UV coatings that are happening and the quality of the fibers that are being produced, you'll probably get more like 11 or 12 years out of that. Right now, the warranties don't stretch that far, but I think properly maintained, you could expect that reasonably. Yeah. This is a little bit out of order, but having seen how easy Mike and Brent just made all of this sound tonight, there's been a tremendous amount of work. I just want to say thank you to your team. Not only has the board been accessible to us, but you cannot, it's hard to comprehend how much time Greg and John and Brian spend with us to make sure we get good feedback and good direction. Not every client invests that. They have full-time jobs without capital projects. So it's really, really helpful for us to get to the right answers with the amount of energy that they're pouring in. So I want to thank you for that.
All right, before we adjourn, I want to thank everyone who joined us this evening. We appreciate the thoughtful discussion and work that goes into preparing for the sessions. If there's no other business or discussion before this board,